Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Small Brain Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. It's JJ McCullough, and we talk about his time teaching English in Japan. I spoke to a fellow degenerate English teacher. But no, JJ is actually a very smart guy. I felt very underqualified to be speaking with him, but we had the common interest of Japan, and we kind of reminisced. He also spent a year in Japan, a decade before me, so it's kind of cool to hear some of his stories and stuff. He hated it. He said it was the worst time of his life. So you get a unfiltered, opposing opinion to me and me just sucking off Japan all the time. So yeah, enjoy. So you do like political, what would you say your job is on YouTube?
Well, my sort of elevator pitch is that I make videos that involve sort of the three C's. I make videos about countries, culture, and Canada. So I feel like most of what I churn out fits into one of those buckets.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a couple of your videos where you were talking about living in Japan, and you said you hated it.
I did hate it. It was the worst year of my life.
Really? Because I feel like mine was the best year of my life.
Really? The best year of your life?
I mean, yeah, it was definitely top 3. I mean, it was incredible, yeah.
That's wild. And you were only there for a year. I was only there for a year, right?
Yeah.
No, it was a rough time. How old were you when you went there?
I was 24.
Yeah, so I was the same age.
Really?
Yeah. So we had very similar experience. I mean, I'm like a decade older than you, so I guess it was a different sort of time, because I was there in 2008, and you were there in...
2018.
Yeah, so a decade apart. That's wild, yeah.
Wow, why did you go?
I went because I had just graduated from college, and I just honestly didn't know what to do with myself. Yeah. And literally, there was an ad in the student paper, and I remember just looking at it, and it was teach English in Japan. And I was like, oh, this is worth a try. So I went to the job interview, and bam, 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 before I knew it, I was in Saitama. It was, I don't know if it was the same with you, but for me, the process was just so expedited. They want to get you there as quickly as humanly possible.
You're just human fodder. You're
just thrown into the meat grinder. Yeah.
Very minimal kind of resume requirements. It's just do you have a college degree? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, you're invited now.
Yeah. I always remember I had this one coworker. She was an American woman. And because there was 2 Gaijin teachers at the school, and then I think 4 Japanese teachers. And I remember once this older Japanese mother from one of the students came to my American friend, and she had this very complicated English problem relating to I guess some homework that she was doing in her adult education class. And then my American coworker was I'm not a real English teacher.
He said that?
Yeah, because it's true. It's just at the end of the day, I'm sure it was the same with you. We're not real English teachers. We learn how to show the flashcards and sing the stupid songs and, teach out of the exercise book. But, I'm not qualified to teach English. I didn't go to college for English. I didn't go to college for teaching. I majored in political science,
Me too,
right?
actually.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
there we go. Eh? So yeah, political science majors. That's what the Japanese need to teach.
It's either
babies.
go pre-law, law school, something really important in DC, or just be a loser.
Yeah.
In Japan. Honestly, that's what I tell people is I had no prospects in real life in America. So I was well, I might as well do something interesting, or be a loser in a foreign country. I mean, that's more interesting.
But it was the same for you. You had just gotten out of college and you needed something to do.
I graduated, I think there was a year in between where I was just a complete loser. I was just teaching music part-time and smoking weed. And I was just things were not going great.
Yeah.
And one day my mom was maybe you should go teach English somewhere. And I was that's good. Yeah.
Were you in, here's a sort of personal question, but I feel this was often one of the big variables. Are you into Japanese women?
I was at the time. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I found that so often. So I'd be on the train or something, and there'd be some white guy, and I'd always be hey, how's it going? Try to talk to them. And, a lot of times they're trying to fit in, so they don't want to be acknowledged by the other white guys. But when I would be chatting with them, and I'd be oh, I've just been here for a few months. How long have you been here? And then they'd be, oh, I've been here for 5 years. And I'd be Japanese wife? And they'd always be yeah.
Kind of look at the ground.
Well, it's the secret. It's the secret motive that I feel a lot of guys don't want to admit, right? I'm gay, so that was never a draw for me. I just even think about it at all as sort of a sex thing. But there are, and I knew this, in my own cohort cohort of teachers that I was trained alongside, like there was a lot of like white guys that were like excited because they were kind of losers in America or Canada or England or whatever, and they had a chance, as they saw it, to score with some Asian women, and you know, a lot of them did. I'm sure you probably had this experience, or maybe you didn't, because you were teaching remote, right?
Yeah, I was teaching like on a computer, like in a teaching farm, basically.
Okay.
Like in this cubicle.
I taught in person, so and yeah, some of the you know, teachers like the gaijin teachers that I taught with, you know, would sleep with the mothers and this sort of thing.
Oh,
right?
Man, like,
So-
hey, you want some English lessons? Like,
Yeah, we'll do private tutoring after hours and all of that, right? I mean, I had mothers come on to me as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
But I guess you wouldn't have had experienced this kind of thing.
No. Yeah, actually, at Nova, where I was, like the big kind of faceless, like it's like the McDonald's of like English schools. They had a policy where, like the year before, one of the teachers met with the student, and then the student killed him. It was like some gruesome story. Yeah, it happened like the year before I got there, I think, like really, really recently. So everyone was like super shocked, and no, we were not allowed to have like students' numbers, nothing, line ID, Facebook, nothing. Like,
well, I mean, to be clear, this wasn't encouraged by the school.
yeah. But,
yeah, but no, it's.
But I mean, they were like, no, you'll lose your job if you ever like see anyone. I mean, I saw one of my students. It was a guy we like went out, like just got absolutely blackout drunk.
Really?
And that was really embarrassing. And then like I showed up like to the next lesson, just like, hey, Atsuhiko, hey, haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? Like,
how old was this kid?
No, it was a man. He was like 50.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's less offensive than I suppose.
Yeah, just a degen.
If you're getting wasted with like some 14-year-old, that would have been a little worrisome.
Yeah. They don't check your ID in Japan though. Like, I feel like kids could drink, but I mean, I would never furnish alcohol for children.
Responsible. Did you ever get in trouble with your managers at the school?
Yeah, dude. I say this all the time. At like every job I've ever had, I've been like the worst possible employee.
Yeah.
Like I am unemployable, especially to Japanese people. They have so many rules.
They do.
But I had white bosses, but it was still like a Japanese company. But yeah, I remember like specifically like a few times, and I've taught music and I've taught English in like other ways. So I'm a real teacher, unlike yourself.
Wow.
But no, not really. But so wait, fuck, what was I saying? I just tangented
About getting in trouble with the teachers or with the
Oh,
school?
yeah. So I've taught other stuff, and like I've never been spoken to like this before. But like I was pulled aside several times where the teacher, the boss, was like, "Hey, we recorded your lesson, and we saw that you said X, Y, Z, and like, can you just not say that and stick to the script next time?" And like, they were really, really hands on. So
I hated that kind of stuff, just the micromanaging. Like,
yeah.
The classroom that I had like barren walls. It was just like 4 white walls, and it was so sterile. And I made, because I like to draw and stuff, right? And I made like pictures and like alphabet things, and I put them up on the wall. And I said, like, in America, this is the way that classrooms for kids are. And my local, staff were all, very impressed. Oh, this is very cool and Western style and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, but then like one of the sort of regional managers came by, and she saw it, and she was very offended, and she told the head office about it. And then they called me to like scold me about like unauthorized decorations and this kind of thing. And then I had to take them down, and then I had to take photos proving that I had taken them down and send them to the head office.
God.
So it's just like, it's like, because you want to teach well, like you want to put your effort into it. But like if any sort of creativity just gets the hammer, then it's like, what's the point? Did you do like any of your music stuff with the kids? And
well, actually, some of my best students, they did keep coming back to me because we could talk about music. But no, I didn't. Yeah, no, if I brought like a musical instrument and it'd be like, oh, you're disturbing the other teachers or whatever. And like,
that's so lame.
I mean, they're just, I feel like in Japan, they just follow rules like blindly instead of like, okay, what's the purpose of this rule? Like, is it actually serving me? Like, I have so many stories about just getting in trouble in Japan just for like, literally just breaking a rule that like shouldn't have been there in the first place. I know it's like a very Western thing to say, but I mean, like prime example is like during COVID, I left right before COVID and we were in cubicles and we were like, sectioned off, and it's also like digital learning, but they made the teachers come in and like you had to keep your mask on all day, stuff like that, where it's like, all right, you're trying to be safe, but like, have you really thought this through? And like, they did that till like 2023. You had to keep doing that.
Jeez Louise.
And the branch shut down. So I mean,
so you had your mask on even while you were teaching the kids?
Yeah, teaching like a 4-year-old on a computer and like your little mic, and so they can't see your face moving, and
that's
whatever.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I remember like at the front door of the school, we had like one of those cubicles where the Japanese people put their little shoes in the traditional Japanese way, like the students would put their shoes in and all that. And I remember like, you know, I would put my shoes in there as well. And I remember once I would always have a big water bottle like this that I'd bring because my throat would get sore from yapping so much.
Yeah.
And I remember once as I was getting ready to leave, I was taking my shoes out of the cubicle and I was leaning down to tie them, and I put my big water bottle on top of the shoe cubicle. And all the children were like laughing. Ah, water bottle on the shoe cubicle. Ah, gaijin. Ah. And then my manager comes up to me and is like, JJ, never do that again. And it's just like,
why?
Because it's just like, I guess that's just not how things are done. The water bottle does not belong on the shoe cubicle.
Even children know that.
Even children know that. Not even for a moment when you're just tying your shoes. It's just like that kind of thing, you know, just like the dumbest things that people would make such a fuss about, and then you would get in trouble for, and people would laugh at you for, and it's just, it didn't seem like it was a super kind of go with the flow sort of culture, right?
Did you know what to expect before you moved there, or was this all like a surprise?
I mean, like, I feel like everybody kind of knows that the Japanese are strict and conformist, and, you know, this is part of their culture. But it's like, you don't really know until you're, you know, encounter it in person, right?
Especially, going to work, like paying taxes, paying your bills, taking the trash out, like everyday stuff. It's like damn near impossible there.
You remember, I'm sure, the trash. I completely forgot about that. Like how if you don't put the right kind of trash in the right, garbage bags, they'll give you like little scolding notes and won't pick it up.
No, actually, the first month I moved there, I didn't take the trash out.
Oh,
like
yeah?
it just piled up in my bathroom. And you know how like Japanese apartments, the bathroom separate from the toilet, separate from the kitchen, whatever. So I just kind of like threw it in a room and just like hoped that someone would help me eventually. And I had to call the city ward office and like explain to him. I'd Google Translate, and then he had Google Translate on his end. So we're just like speaking to each other through the fucking robot on the phone.
Oh, man.
It took an hour to find out
like
the actual schedule. It was miserable, yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's just like the friction of so much daily life was just what I think was very unpleasant. And I didn't have like strong friendships or other things to kind of compensate for that. Like my friends there were all other gaijin teachers, basically. And when I hung out with them, all I would do is like complain about work, and all they would do is complain about work. And we didn't really have a relationship that existed on any level beyond work. So it just kind of felt like my whole life was just dominated in this kind of totalitarian way.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, I had fun things that I did on my own on the weekend. I liked to go shopping and go to restaurants and, you know, just go for walks and hang out. And I went back to Japan for the first time in 15 years last year. And that was really enjoyable. Like, I was there for 2 weeks, and it was an awesome trip because it was basically just all of the things that I liked doing there 15 years ago, but concentrated and pure and no horrible work in between, right?
You also knew what you were getting yourself into, so you could kind of like
and being able to leave on my own terms as well, you know?
Yeah, I watched your video. You said it felt like a prison sentence.
It did. Well, I mean, and I scratched off the days every day. You know, I had a calendar and I would cross off the days
on the
one by
cell.
one. I actually went on a Japanese talk show recently to discuss that very video, which I guess the Japanese had stumbled upon. And
really,
you know, because you know, Japanese people love to hear foreigners talk about Japan. And they really fixated on me crossing off the days, you know.
Wow. Were they offended? Were they like surprised?
I think they were. I don't know. It was kind of difficult to tell because, of course, none of them could speak English. And so it was being communicated through some monotone translator in my ear. But yeah, they were kind of, I don't know, bemused, I guess. Japanese people, I don't know, they're interested in, I feel like, Western perceptions, but only to a point, you know? Because again, like you're just very sort of set in your ways. And so I think the understanding is kind of like, oh, that guy perceives these things differently because he's a foreigner and weird. Ha ha ha, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to, you know, I mean, I don't want to be sort of patronizing about this, but you know, I don't think that when a foreigner criticizes something in Japan, it's necessarily seen as a moment for like self-examination or something like that.
Yeah, there's not much of that in Japan, is there?
I don't think so. As opposed to like American culture, I think, where Americans are extremely like self-critical, and you know, when a foreigner says something bad about America, they really take it to heart, and it's like, oh yeah, you're so right, and this kind of thing. Americans, I find to be an incredibly self-loathing people in a way that frankly I find to be like quite off-putting.
Really?
Right? As someone who really loves America and like loves American culture and all that America has contributed to the world, I sometimes find it a bit exhausting the degree to which Americans love to hear other people shit on America, love to sort of bring down America, and are just
true, yeah.
very, like when a foreigner comes to an American and says like, oh, in America you suck because of this, 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 and this, and the American is always like, oh yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
And I find that, I mean, you've traveled a lot. You must encounter this a lot. Foreigners sort of talking down to you and telling you everything.
Well, it's really literally just Western Europeans that do it. Everyone else loves America.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody loves America, except for like some old Vietnamese people, and people that we've scorned.
Yeah.
Probably some people in Latin America, but I mean, yeah, I think it's just like a snobbery thing that exists in like the UK. I feel like the UK has like a kind of like a brotherly mentality where we're like, we're always kind of at odds with each other, but they do love to talk about us a lot, where it's like, I don't know, France, Belgium, like all those Western European countries have like a chip on their shoulder, I feel like.
It's true. Yeah, Germans are really bad like that as well. I mean, Canadians are really bad like that as well. Canadians are some of the most self-righteously anti-American people.
But it's like, but they're so similar, the countries, so it's like, what can you really say? I mean, culturally, like...
Yeah. You mean Canadians are just
Canadians
Western?
and Americans, like, are there two more similar countries in the world? Like,
no, and that's what makes it so sort of ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
And why I think it actually, when Canadians are super anti-American, it becomes a form of sort of Canadian self-loathing as well, because it's obviously the same culture. We inhabit the same sort of cultural milieu. We sort of enjoy the same things, right? Our day-to-day lives are the same, right? So when a Canadian is sort of very down on American culture, or, there's a certain kind of Canadian that feels like, oh, we in Canada don't have a culture. We've just been taken over by America and this kind of thing. And when they talk in that way, it's like you're basically just saying like you don't like the country you actually inhabit. You're kind of in love with a kind of fantasy of what you think Canada should be rather than the Canada that actually is. And I like the Canada that actually is. I don't care how Americanized it is. I think that's fine. Sometimes countries just wind up very similar because of the way history unfolds. And I don't think that's something you have to be ashamed of or see as a sign of weakness.
Yeah. What do you think is similar between the countries? Like,
well, everything's similar, right? Like just day-to-day life. Like it's the list of differences is vastly shorter than the list of sames.
I haven't noticed many differences. I noticed Vancouver is a lot of immigrants. That's pretty much. I was actually looking up last night. It's like 40%.
Yeah.
People from like overseas.
Oh, the thing just vibrated. Is that a bad
Did it? Oh, fuck. Yeah. And I was looking it up last night. It's like easy to become a resident here. Like I could just rent an apartment, show like a bank statement and my social security number, and like it's not residency, but it's like a 6-month stay in the country, which is crazy.
Well, I can't speak to it. I mean, it is, I think it can be deceptively easy. I think that if you want to stay long-term, if you want to get a green card and stuff like that, it's easy to get short-term visas in Canada, particularly if you're from Western Europe or I think from the US, right? I mean, it's harder if you want to sort of immigrate permanently, which a lot of Americans find out the hard way because, there's always this idea every time, a Republican gets elected, there's like, we're going to move to Canada, right? And then a lot of times, because then you have to you have to start a bank account from scratch. It's all the same stuff that we had to do in Japan, right? Because in many ways, Canada and the US are not integrated enough. And that's, I think, what can be quite discombobulating is that even though the places are like culturally so identical, there still are two different legal regimes that you're living under, and you kind of have to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah, that's true.
But Vancouver is very diverse. I mean, New York City is very diverse. San Francisco is very diverse, right? I mean, it's just kind of the character of a big urban North American city, right? Yeah. But we're diverse in different ways, too. It's like, I'm sure if I went down to where you live, there's a lot of black people. There's not very many black people here. Yeah. When you go to big American cities, you find a lot of Hispanic people in a way you just don't in, big Canadian cities.
Yeah.
So.
A ton of Asians here. I've never seen so many Japanese people in my life outside of Japan. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think Vancouver, does have one of the largest, or maybe even the largest Asian population outside of Asia on a per capita basis. And that's...
I feel it. Like the signs are in Japanese. I've never seen signs in Japanese before.
Yeah.
Yeah, ever. Like outside of Japan. It's crazy. Maybe like Thailand, like touristy, like shitholes, but not in like a nice city.
I mean, I think you do see it though in places like New York and San Francisco and big sort of diverse.
Yeah, maybe San Francisco. Maybe I just haven't traveled on the West Coast enough.
Yeah.
But,
where have you been in the West Coast?
Portland, Seattle, LA, San Diego.
Okay, so you've hit all the big ones.
Yeah. But I think Vancouver's it seems like the most chill.
Yeah.
Portland, everyone's really angry. Seattle, people are just kind of not like outgoing and friendly. Like it's hard to like I don't know. Like if I said hello to someone on the street, it would take like probably 15 people for someone to say it back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, Vancouver, I've made videos. Actually, I'd be curious to see if I would recommend you watch some of these videos I've made, because I've made like a trio of videos called Your City Isn't Unique. And it involves this idea that there's certain things that I feel everybody says about their city. And so it can sometimes be hard to tell what's an actual accurate characterization of a city or not. But that being said, like Vancouver people will often say, oh, you know, here in Vancouver, it's very hard to make friends and the people here are very cold and unwelcoming. But I've since sort of learned that a lot of people say that about their own cities. And, you know, it's a very sort of popular cliche to presume that everywhere else is friendlier than, you know, where you come from. And I mean, I've felt that, but I've never lived any, except for that 1 year in Japan. I've only ever lived in Vancouver. I was
Why
born
did
here.
you choose Japan? Like, were you just looking for adventure, or?
It seemed safe and, you know, wealthy and, you know, kind of, again, like just seemed like an easy choice, right?
Yeah.
I thought it would be an easy foreign place to live in, as opposed to, you know, if I was in Thailand or, you know, a more exotic place, you know, in Japan, didn't have to worry about, like, you know, the cleanliness of the water or like where the food is safe to eat.
Right.
And,
Are the roads going to be paved?
Yeah, those
like,
kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I just had one friend that did music there for a couple of years, and he just like couldn't stop talking about it. He's just like, it's the best. It's like a utopia. You know, everywhere looks like Disneyland. It's so clean and like safe and fun. And yeah, honestly, I found that to be true. Like my experience was really different because I actually had like 4 friends that we were really tight and we did everything together. And so I feel like to me that made a huge difference, because I agree, like it was hard to make friends with Japanese people, like damn near impossible. Like you can hang out and like maybe drink once or twice, but you're not going to break down those like kind of layers of like, who actually is this person? Do I actually like you? It's just always like go out and drink and like just fuck around and smoke cigarettes, and like that's pretty much it. You know, see him twice and then that's the last you see of him.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a very accurate characterization, I think, of the sort of superficial friends that you make in Japan, right? Yeah, it is just like drinking and then like some idle like city wandering, and then I kind of never hear from them again. It never evolves into anything substantial.
Yeah, I think if I were to do it again, I would like double down on my hobbies, like do music more, go to the gym, like, I don't know, join a boxing club, or do something where it's like you have those like characters that you see like once a week and you can actually, you know, because I mean, I agree, like my job it kind of dominated my life in a way where it like during the week I was just like depressed, and then on the weekend I was just like this awesome vacation that I was funding. You know, and actually in the end I broke even. Like I didn't like lose money, I didn't save money, it just was kind of like one big vacation, you know?
Really? Wow.
But I did have to pay for it. Like the work fucking sucked. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like the worst part of it.
It was really the worst part of it. I kept a very detailed journal that I sometimes like to read and reflect back on what it was like, just to remind myself. Because, you know, it has been 15 years. And so, you know, your mind inevitably sort of forgets the worst parts. And it's easy to sort of become sentimental and to only remember the good things. And
that's true.
But it was. And it's like, I think as well, in our culture, there's always a pressure to put the best spin on everything, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I'm sure you learned a lot and, you know, this kind of stuff. But it's like, no, it was objectively a bad decision. Like, I regret doing it. It's like...
Really?
Yeah, I do. Because what I learned, the big thing that I learned was just that I have the capacity to make bad decisions, right? And I think that was an important lesson to learn, right? It's not everything you choose to do in life will not always have some silver lining. Sometimes you just make a bad decision and it's just a big waste of time and a waste of money, and you sort of stagnate professionally and personally, and that's what I feel like my year in Japan was. It was like a year of stagnation that then I had to work hard to catch up, you know, with my peers when I got back to Vancouver. So...
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a pretty dark take on it.
I don't know. I mean, but don't you think that's true? It's like sometimes you just make a bad decision.
Yeah. I mean, definitely sometimes. I don't know. I can't speak for you, but so how did you feel like you were like behind when you got back? Like, what were you trying to do that like you?
Well, I mean, I didn't know, right? And that was the reason why. Pardon me. That was the reason why I went to Japan. I didn't know what I wanted to do professionally after college, and this just seemed like an easy, you know, course that was sort of laid out in front of me. But then when I got back to Vancouver, it was like, well, I'm still in the same place I was when I
Yeah.
left college. Like, I haven't gained any skills. Like, obviously, I don't want to be an English teacher. I don't want to live in Japan. I never wanted to do anything that involved children. I feel like that's like, ideally, when you do one of these jobs, if anybody who's watching is thinking about doing this for themselves, I feel like you have to either like kids, Japan, or English, right? Or teaching, right?
Yeah,
And if you're not into any of those things, then it's like, what are you doing? And I wasn't into any of those things. And so as a result, when I got back to Canada, I was no better off than when I started.
You weren't into Japan?
Well, I mean, I
What do
was
you mean, like-
into Japan, I guess, in the sense that like I'm into foreign places but you know, I didn't like have any long-term ambition to live there or work with Japanese people or do something where knowledge of Japan would be useful.
Oh, yeah. Damn, so Japan just seemed like kind of a random choice. Like, I guess you could have then gone to China or Korea at that point.
I could have. I mean, Japan is interesting because, you know, it's such a, I think Japan is, you know, one of the big cultural nations, right? Like, it's had an enormous influence on the culture of this continent.
Yeah.
And so as somebody who's like interested in culture, I was interested in sort of deepening my knowledge of Japanese culture. And I feel like I did. So in
Yeah.
that sense, I guess it wasn't a complete waste. Like, I know a lot about Japan now, which
Yeah.
has been useful, and I guess some of the other things that I've done. But, you know, could have I acquired that knowledge in some other way? You know, maybe through a couple of trips to Japan as opposed to
Yeah.
living there for a year, you know?
Yeah. Did you think, like, how soon after getting there were you like, fuck, I shouldn't have done this?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like the first night it was pretty scary.
Holy shit.
Well, I mean, but you know, the first night is always scary. I'm sure you have this experience when you travel a lot. You wind up in a place and you're just kind of like, okay, what now? You know?
Yeah. No, I remember vividly my first day in Japan. Like, I was actually on the toilet and I just had like the first moment to myself and I was like, oh my God, I'm far away.
Yes,
like for
yes.
1 year. Like, I felt like kind of like this trapped feeling, but also very free at the same time. It was a weird mixture.
But no, I mean, like, I think, you know, after a couple of months, you kind of get a sense of what the job and the life is like. And I think at that point, I kind of regretted it. But at the same time, I was very loyal. I'd signed a contract for a year, and I felt like I had to be good to my word. And I'm sure you know as well, like, there was all these sort of legends at my school about what they called the runners, you know, the kids that just, the teachers that just left in the dead of night and caused a lot of problems for the school. And this
But
kind of thing.
you'd lose your last paycheck.
You would it would be an enormous sort of burden to bear on all sorts of ways, right?
But I mean, at my school, you could get out of your contract, but you just had to pay them. Yeah, I
Really?
think you had to pay them, like, or you lost a bonus or
Yeah.
something.
And I mean, they'd all hate you, and I'm sure they'd make your life very difficult as you sought to wrap up your lessons. Like at my school, at the company I worked for, you know, they were very clear that it's like, if you run, we're not going to help you, like, you know, close your bank account. We're not going to help you with the flight. We're not going to help you, you know, like, they wouldn't help you with anything.
They helped you with the
basically.
flight if you stayed?
Yeah, they did. They booked my flight back.
They paid for it?
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
Did they pay for your apartment?
Yeah. Oh, no, they didn't. I had to pay the rent myself, although they had it set up in such a way that it was like docked automatically for my salary.
What was your rent? Do you remember?
I can't even remember. This was so long ago.
Mine was in 2018, and it was like $600 a month. It was
$600
so
a month.
cheap.
Yeah, it was definitely under 1,000. But what was your apartment like? Mine was tiny.
Mine was actually pretty big because you walked in and there was like a little shoe container, little drawer thing, and then like a little kitchen with 2 burners and a sink and like a couple shelves and then like a fridge, microwave, coffee maker, and then like inside there was like a little toilet room.
Yeah.
Where you open the door and like the toilet pops open and shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And also the toilet seat would like warm up, like you'd
Oh,
open
my.
it and it would be like, what?
So decadent.
It was very nice. And then in the washroom or whatever, it was the sink, washer, and then the shower. So it was like actually pretty big. And then I had my bedroom with like a little TV in the corner and a couch and then a
Bedroom?
porch.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was actually very big. Like I was the envy of all my coworkers when they came over.
Louise. I had like 4 walls. It was like 100 square feet.
Oh, you were
or
in
something.
Tokyo though.
Yeah. You were in Osaka?
Yeah. Do you think that's why?
No,
because
because
Tokyo is like so stiff. Like,
Well, it is, but I mean, like, I like cities. Like, I like the city life. I didn't live right in the heart of Tokyo. I lived in Saitama, which is like a suburban sort of surrounding area
Yeah.
of sort of the greater Tokyo.
but it's like
district.
similar to Tokyo, isn't it? I mean, it's like.
Oh yeah,
kind
and I
of-
mean, I went to Tokyo all the time, right? Like, it was just like a 30-minute train ride from my Saitama suburban community.
Yeah.
But yeah, I lived in a very small apartment, but I didn't mind that. Like, I have a small apartment now. I kind of like living in sort of smaller spaces.
So you didn't mind the
wasn't-
shoebox situation.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, I guess it wasn't. It was more just that I was always jealous that other people had bigger bigger apartments.
Size
Because,
envy.
well, just, I guess, one more thing to complain about. I was in such a sour mood. I was just always very pessimistic and negative all the time. So
I feel like you should have left because, I mean,
Maybe
at the
I
end of the
should've.
day, like, it's just like a faceless, like, corporation that you're screwing over. Like, fuck them.
just, I don't know. Because it's like, because my coworkers were often, I don't know, just so imperious and kind of insensitive and just unpleasant, and I just didn't want them to get even more unpleasant, and I didn't want to be shamed even more. And I mean, I guess this is a big way that the the gears of Japanese civilization are oiled, right? Is through shame and intimidation,
Oppression.
Yeah. And then that breeds a kind of conformity because it's just easier to go along to get along and, just keep my head down. The Japanese have this horrible expression where they say the nail that sticks up the highest is the first to get the hammer.
Yeah.
And you definitely feel that.
That's wild. Yeah, I actually didn't, because I was teaching all online, and for like extra work on our day off, we could do like, I think it was once a month, we went to this school outside of town, and we taught in person at this middle school. And these kids were tyrants, dude. Like, I was used to like little obedient kids. And actually, you say you lived in Saitama, and I'd never been to Saitama, but the only like memory I have is like talking to kids on the computer, and they're in the English teacher will just like shove them in a room, and then I'm there like, hello, like on this big screen, and this kid just like, and I'm like, where are you from? And they're like, Saitama. And that's the only knowledge I have of Saitama.
No, it's a real sort of suburban sprawl, but I like suburban sprawl, very sort of like just middle class families and that sort of thing. So,
what were we just talking about? I just did a little tangent.
we were just talking about what were we talking about?
I had a point. I had a fucking point.
Well, you were saying how you went to the school and you had to teach in person. And
Oh yeah, those kids were like teaching online. It's like just you and the kid.
Yeah.
And so they're like they have to be obedient, and it's being recorded. But like in this classroom setting, it's just me and this like big group of middle schoolers, and dude, I was surprised. Like they were kind of like shitheads. They would talk back and like make fun of me and like bully people. I saw it all the time. Like, and you said the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Like I saw it all the time. Like if I would ask a question to the class and like nobody would answer because I guess no one wanted to be like the smart one, or no one wanted to like stand out. It was kind of sad, actually.
No, it's and I feel like that was something that was maybe a bit of a shock in terms of like expectations of Japan versus realities of Japan, because you are sort of told that the Japanese are very obedient and polite and all that, and adults more or less are, but kids are like kids, and the Japanese kids were just like the kids here. They were little punks and snot noses, and they were misbehaving and rude and mean and bullying to each other and to me. Like I had the exact same experience, right?
Yeah.
And it's although I did find this as well. Maybe you can relate to this too. I did feel like you can sort of slowly witness the Japanese system kind of crush the life spirit in them as they get older. Like the little kids, I had some little kids that were really sort of precocious and full of life and fun and funny, and I liked to play with them and make drawings for them. And they were like, those classes were a lot of fun. And then but then when they start to hit like middle school and high school especially, you just see the degree that they just become sort of cogs in the system, right? They start wearing those horrible uniforms, and they just like the light goes out of their eyes, and they're just like,
Yeah. They start studying for their like after school exams and like trying to get into Harvard, and that's when
I had this one kid. His name was Akira, which I always remember because that was for like the movie, right? And he went to this very elite private school, and he had this beautiful uniform with, the gold buttons and the braid and all that. It looked like he was a soldier, and he had to wear it all the time, even on the weekends. And the school was so strict, in fact, and because he always had to wear his fancy uniform, like he couldn't drink certain brands of soda, because if someone saw him in his distinctive uniform drinking that soda, it would reflect badly on the school. And he
had like a list of
and like he couldn't go to like certain malls, and it was just like all this like kind of totalitarian control. And he was, needless to say, just this completely sort of crushed, soulless kid. God. And I would try to teach him, and he would just be like, it was how was your day, Akira-san? And he's like, it was fine, I studied,
Yeah, it's like every day is the same. Like, damn, you're really testing my skills as a teacher here. Like, how do I introduce new vocab? All you do is study.
No, it was rough.
Fucking hell, man. So what age group did you teach?
I think we probably had a similar thing. I feel like in a lot of these sort of private before and after tutoring schools, you have like either babies to adults, right? And everything in between. So I had like some some little babies that couldn't even sit up. And then I had, just like some older Japanese businessmen who were, trying to learn business English,
Right, yeah. Oh my God, dude, I'm just getting so many memories now, like, because it was like such a shit job. It's almost like, it felt like being in detention, like in middle school or something. For me, like, it was so bad and like so boring and brutal, but yeah, that nostalgia, you're like, man, like something about it. It's just like, it's just such a ridiculous time in my life. I just can't help but look back on it like fondly. Like I remember teaching and like, you said you like had 90-year-old students and I had fucking old students. The one guy, I think his name was, no, Atsuhiko. No, it wasn't Atsuhiko. It was like, it doesn't matter. But this ancient guy and had this like ancient webcam and this terrible mic and I could barely hear him and the lighting was terrible in his room. And he would just want to talk about like aliens and shit.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I think Jesus Christ like came back in a spaceship and like colonized America. And I'm like, let's talk about that. Like, let's do it.
That's amazing.
And he, like at my school, like you could pay $70 and get like a one-on-one lesson, which is a terrible deal. But he would book like 2 or 3 lessons in a row. And I'm like, all right, we're talking about aliens for 3 hours. Let's fucking go.
Man, I forgot about those private lessons. That was the other thing, too, is like these schools are such a hustle of these parents, right? Yeah. Constantly trying to upsell you to pitch private lessons. And then a lot of times the private lessons were just complete scams, right?
Yeah.
Because like the manager would be like, okay, so-and-so wants private lesson. Just draw with them. That's, just like whatever would give them a good experience so that the kid says, oh, mommy, I had great private lesson with
Right, it's just customer service. Yeah. It's not like actual learning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You just want them to have a good time and maybe croak out a few like, can I have a cupcake, please? But
I remember they would give us like the lesson, and there was like 5 minutes of free talk at the beginning, and I would always extend it as far as I could. Like we had 40-minute lessons. I would do like 10, 15, like 20, sometimes 30 minutes of just like talking shit and like, where did the time go? Oh, we're such good friends. Let's just do the lesson real quick, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, same.
Everybody wins,
That was pretty fun. What was like a typical weekend for you?
Went hiking.
Hiking.
Lots of drinking. Went to the onsen.
The onsen. I never did that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did it as much as I could.
Did you get in trouble because you have tattoos? I heard.
I didn't have tattoos.
Oh, okay.
But now I just kind of cover them strategically with like the little cloth and stuff. But
did you have to keep? I remember this because during like teacher training, they said like, oh, if you have tattoos, like, never show them in public because the Japanese associate them with like Yakuza and that kind of stuff.
Well, I guess you were there a decade before me, so maybe it's like loosened. I don't know. But you said you went back and like shit hadn't changed, right?
I mean, Saitama hadn't changed much. Tokyo, I feel, is changing a lot, and I like it. I talked about that in a video I made last year when I went back. I just feel like Tokyo feels more vibrant, more cosmopolitan, more diverse. I feel like a lot of younger people have traveled more, have been to the West, have been to other countries. Their sort of horizons are broadened. Yeah. There's more immigrants now in Tokyo, which is interesting too.
There's a lot more.
Yeah. So I don't know. It feels like a more sort of cosmopolitan, worldly place. And it feels more dynamic, and it gives me a sense of optimism. When I was in Japan, it was sort of like in the lost decades, as they say, like just the real sort of early 2000s sort of deep stagnation of the society. And it felt like a very stagnant society.
How did it stagnate? What do you mean?
Well, it's just like Japan famously had like a pretty steep economic decline in the 1990s. And they called it sort of the lost decade, and then it became the lost decades, in just a kind of sense that they're sort of like world crushing ambitions that seemed so imminent in like the 1980s, right? When, they were buying up all the real estate in America, and, these big companies like Sony and Nintendo and whatever seemed to be colonizing the world. Those dreams kind of came to a hard end in the 90s. And so there was just this kind of period of stagnation in which it kind of felt like nothing was really modernizing, that they were kind of frozen in this kind of like 80s mindset. And I felt that when I was there in 2008. But when I was back last year in 2024, it did feel like, that there's reason, at least in a kind of superficial way, there's reasons to feel optimistic because the country just feels like it has a bit more dynamism to it.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, when I was there in 2018, I don't know, Osaka is just like a completely different world. It feels
Yeah.
culturally like more exciting and stuff. But now they're like revamping it. They're like clearing out all the grime and all the fun stuff and all like
Oh,
the
yeah?
dirty little bars. And they're like, because they're doing the World Expo 2025.
Okay.
So actually, one of my favorite drinking districts is like gone now because they condemned it for like black mold or something.
Oh, really?
Like, so yeah, it feels like Osaka in particular is like changing a lot. Every time I go back, it's like cleaner and shinier and like, I don't know. I feel like Japanese are like obsessed with like appearances and making things look like really nice and
Yeah.
making everyone feel comfortable and stuff instead of having like, I don't know, because to me that's the charm of Osaka. It's like this just like gross like fun city, but they're kind of ruining it, I feel like.
Yeah, there's a lot of sentimentality for that kind of gross stuff, I find. I have these, I've bought a lot of these sort of collector books when I was in Japan, and now I'm kind of obsessed with them, and I keep ordering them from Japanese Amazon. What they call, people that watch my channel know how obsessed I am with this concept, what they call the Showah Age. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, like the 60s and stuff.
Yeah. Sort of like the
Vintage.
post-war to like the 80s or so was like the Showa times. And that's kind of when Japan was a little, it was developing and getting wealthier and that. But it was also, it had a sort of roughness to it. And there's so much sentimentality around sort of Showa aesthetics. So you can buy like these like little books where it's just like photographs of Showa era bars and Showa coffee shops and Showa apartments and that kind of stuff. And it has a sort of, kind of a roughness, but it has a character to it that I enjoyed. And, in the same way that people are obsessed with, like liminal spaces and dead malls and that kind of stuff on this continent, the Japanese are sort of obsessed with the vibes of Showa stuff. And you can go on tours and see bars and restaurants and things.
Yeah. I know they're so good at like maintaining their old stuff. Like, did you do any thrifting or like vintage shopping
of
over
course,
there?
right? And that stuff's lots of fun too. And some of these great sort of vintage shopping districts. I used to love to go to like, used toy stores or used magazine stores.
Yeah.
There's that one area in Tokyo. I forget what it's called, but it's just like nothing but sort of like flea markets and stuff. I love that kind of scene. Yeah.
I found like some ancient magazines in Osaka from like the 70s.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
nicely, and like the wrappers and everything.
No, for sure. And I like to collect knickknacks and little gewgaws and things, right? And
Gewgaws.
gewgaws, right? And no, you can buy all sorts of like cool vintage Japanese like toys and movie posters and all sorts of little artifacts. I mean, the Japanese, they take good care of their things, right? Like, and that's something that I think is very enviable. Like, they respect objects, they respect physical things. When you have, clothes or books or whatever else, like you take good care of them, and it's sort of seen as a virtue to do that, to maintain your. Even I'm sure if you ever seen like even Japanese hobos when they're like living in a cardboard box, but the cardboard box is like very neat, and they have like they will have like a little stack of books, and their clothes will be neatly folded in one corner of the cardboard box and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a virtuous.
Even their hobos are better than ours.
Sad but true.
So what did you do? Like, what was the leaving process like? Were you just like, fuck it? Like, did you feel any type of way about leaving? Were you sad, or were you just like,
No,
let's get the fuck out of here?
I was ready to go.
Did you go home for Christmas or anything?
No, I never left. That would have been too weird going home for Christmas. I think. Did you go home for Christmas?
Yeah, I did.
I felt like that would. I heard like a lot of my gaijin teacher friends did that, but that seemed like that would be too kind of much of cultural whiplash for me, I feel.
It was for sure, and I'd only been there for 3 months. I got there in September, so it's like I didn't really miss my family yet. I was just kind of there out of obligation type thing. But I did my birthday in Japan alone, and it was like very sad. It was before I could make friends, so I was just like alone. I was like, I'll just go out drinking till 5 a.m. because I'm not sad. No, I'm not. No, not me. Like, I'm partying. I'm not.
I had a birthday party. We went to Disneyland with me and some of my gaijin teacher friends. And like, it was fine, but it just felt like a very sort of like hollow recreation because it's like, these aren't like my real friends. And it's like, I don't actually really care about these people. Like, these are very like superficial, shallow relationships. And it just kind of, it just made me very aware of what I was missing. And
yeah. Right, it like puts it right there in front of your face. Like, remember this?
Yeah.
Remember Disney World, the real one?
Yeah.
Like,
no, it was just, no, this is what I mean. Like, it was just the dominant sort of emotional feeling was sad and longing and loneliness and all of that. So
fuck, dude.
Well, but I mean, again, like it's the lesson is that you can make bad decisions and like you can endure a difficult year. It didn't kill me, right? But it's useful to have bad years in your life. It gives you appreciation for the good years, and it makes you maybe think very seriously before you make a big life-changing decision like moving to another city, let alone moving to another country.
Yeah. So when you left, was it just like fuck? Like, did you say goodbye to people?
I did.
Did you act like you were sad?
No,
like,
not really. I would even actually, I guess this was kind of somewhat asshole-ish behavior, but sometimes I'd even be like to the children, okay, bye-bye forever. And then they'd be like, oh, so, no, not forever. Yeah, forever, bye-bye.
No explanation.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm gone. I'm just like your dad. I'm fucking out
Yeah.
of here. Like, they have like abandonment issues now. They're like, where did JJ-san go? Like,
They gave me, I mean, it was, sometimes I have lots of like photos of me saying goodbye to the kids, and they wanted to get pictures with the parents and this kind of thing. And some of them gave me like little presents, and I still have some of those to this day. So, I mean, I shouldn't say like it was just, but no, I mean, I was happy to leave. And, like the last week I remember very vividly because they stuck me in some hotel and I was really just going through the motions. And I don't know if this was the case for you, but I had to like train my replacement as well.
oh, no.
Yeah, who was like this girl from San Francisco who I really liked and actually I have stayed in touch with. But that was fun because then it was like I kind of gave her the inside scoop on everything, like the neighborhood and all the different students and how to deal with the manager and the Japanese teachers. And that was kind of fun. And then sort of mentally having one foot out the door and being like, okay, it's up to you now. Good luck. And
Did you like scare her? Like, this job sucks, the kids suck, everything sucks. Were you like negative, or were you like, all right, like best of
I feel
luck?
like I tried to be honest. I think she had already been in Japan before. I find like there was a number of the gaijin teachers who had spent some time in Japan and they loved it so much that they kind of knew what they were getting into.
Yeah.
So in that sense, she was kind of a little bit more, I feel like, equipped to know what this was going to entail. But no, I was honest. I mean, the best thing you can be is honest, I think.
Yeah. But you weren't like the grouchy, like, you're going to regret this.
No,
Like,
I don't think so. I mean, people make their own decisions and I can't. Maybe she put more thought into it than I did.
yeah, it sounds like she did.
Yeah, so
It wouldn't be hard, though.
yeah, well,
Yeah. And then when you went back, was it like, you said you had fun? It was like
I did
enjoyable.
have fun. Yeah, I was there for 2 weeks. 1 week I made a video about the trip, and the other week I was just sort of chilling, because I just got to do everything on my own terms, right? Like I remember sitting right here in this very studio and like planning out what I was going to do. I was just like really racking my brain. What were all the things I liked doing 15 years ago? And I just thought of all the shops and the restaurants and the malls and, like, as I like shopping a lot. And so I really wanted to have a pretty shopping sort of centric trip. I'm
Yeah,
not like
it's a good place to shop.
It is a great place to shop. There's so many cool things to buy and see. And, I'm not kind of an outdoors man like you apparently are. So I didn't really,
Sometimes.
I didn't really want to do any like touristy things because I did all of that the first time. So it was mostly just I kind of wanted to shop and have like nostalgic sort of tours of neighborhoods and areas that I used to like to hang out in.
Yeah.
And I was able to do it. Like I went through the I made a list and I was able to go through the list and I was able to hit all of the marks. And so when I left, I just felt very fulfilled. Like I felt like, man, I did what I wanted to do. I learned some new things. I bought a lot of cool new stuff. I'm coming home after 2 sort of productive, pleasant weeks and feel very fulfilled. I also got to meet a bunch of, I got to meet several friends or fans of my YouTube channel in
nice.
Japan. And so that was pretty fun too. And that was, I suppose, made it less of a lonely experience as well, because I was able to socialize in a way I never really had in 2008.
How did you meet up with them?
I guess I was just sort of posting pictures on Instagram, and then some of them were like, "Oh, you're in Japan. I'm in Japan, and I love your channel, and let's hang out." And
Nice.
so I just said yes to everybody that offered, and yeah, we had,
Nice.
It was great. Yeah,
That's awesome. So, I mean, yeah, it seems like you have, because actually my buddy, my coworker at the time, because I was, sorry, when I was leaving Japan, I was like, fuck, like, I'm never going to come back, whatever. But my buddy actually was like, no, now you have like a vacation destination for the rest of your life that you know, like, more than any other place about. And I feel like the same applies to you. Like, you went back and you were able to plan your own, like, banging ass trip. You know what I mean? So it's not all a wash. I mean, like,
that's true.
I feel like it's really rewarding to go back for me, even for me, like every time, like I discover something new, but you do kind of hate it more. Like, I feel like as you stay there longer, it's like, fuck, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. So 2 weeks is like the perfect kind of, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because like it was such a good trip, and I'm like it was almost like a year today almost, right?
Yeah.
And because it was like the first week of February. And so I've become sort of nostalgic about it, but at the same time I do wonder a lot, like, do I ever want to go back there again, at least anytime soon? because there's so many other places in the world to see. But I don't know. On the other hand, it's like if I go to Japan, like I know I will enjoy the experience because I know that there's like it'll be very predictable, and in that sense, it's kind of like ordering the thing that you know you'll like on the menu rather than trying something new for the sake of trying something new.
Yeah.
And hoping that the novelty will be as satisfying as the thing that's familiar and comfortable. So I don't know quite how I feel.
But I still think that you could go back and have like a fulfilling experience because you're self-employed now. You don't have to work for some like, you know, totalitarian company.
Yeah.
You can like curate your own kind of experience a little better, you know? So
I guess what I'm sort of searching for is like a country that I can casually visit and have an experience that's similar to the experience that I have in Japan, where like there's lots of interesting shopping, there's lots of interesting sort of cultural sort of stuff to absorb and learn. You know, I like the culture of sort of like middle class kind of consumer culture. That's what I like the most. And Japan is obviously very, you know, they're kind of one of the great superpowers of the world when it comes to that sort of thing. So I'm trying to think of like a place that's kind of like that. Like I'm thinking about going back to England. I'm thinking maybe going to France, which I've never really spent any time in. You know, Germany. I don't
Korea
know.
is pretty similar. To
Yeah,
Japan.
Korea is pretty similar. I'm quite interested in South Korea.
I think the people are friendlier too. That's
think
what
so?
I hear. Yeah. Well, I only spent like a couple weeks there. I didn't see much, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think they're more outgoing.
I get that impression. I get the impression that that Koreans are a little bit more kind of like Americanized in a way.
Yeah.
Like that they're not in terms of culture, but like in terms of like their temperament, right? Like that they kind of have a little bit more of a kind of American style individualism to them.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Japanese who have this, you know, very conformist kind of mindset.
Yeah, and in South Korea, like we, you know, basically built it, you know, so like the road signs look similar. Like I don't know, it's just small stuff where you're like, oh, that's oddly American.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. I guess part of me just kind of worries that maybe it's too much like Japan, though, in the sense that, you know, I might just kind of think like, well, why don't I just go to Japan?
that's literally what I think when I went to Korea.
Yeah.
I was like, I should just go to Japan. I know way more about it. Like, there doesn't have to be a language barrier. I know Japanese. Like, why am I struggling intentionally over here?
Have you been to Taiwan?
No, I haven't. But my girlfriend's been, and she said it was really similar to Japan.
I've heard that as well. Like sort of Korea, Taiwan, Japan, I've heard are very culturally similar. Not in no significant part because the Japanese, of course, colonized all of these places and tried to build them in their own image. So I'm sure that that's not irrelevant. But no, I mean, Taiwan is interesting. Taiwan because it, I don't know, like the climate of Taiwan is very different. Like I understand it's kind of like more sort of a tropical kind of place.
It's very far south. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
South China kind of climate, like Hong Kong, Southeast Asia.
Hong Kong, I think, might be interesting as well.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I have. It is similar to Japan, but it feels more. It's a weird, like bastardized version of China. It's like British, obviously. So like half the people speak English, and then half are just like Chinese as fuck.
Yeah.
I didn't really stay long enough to really understand it. It just felt like foreign, but like the infrastructure looks British. Like they have like the streetcars and like the double-decker buses and stuff.
Oh, yeah?
But then you have like a high-rise apartment with like 120 floors where like everyone's living in squalor. It's a very strange, like, I'd like to go back and try to understand it more, but no, it's definitely like an enigma to me as of now.
It's intriguing. I mean, like I'm interested in it. Yeah, it's definitely become a lot more politically oppressed in recent years too, which is kind of a turnoff. I'm always pretty sensitive about going to a place where the people are not free because that feels kind of exploitive. You know, like that I can live. You know, because it's like my whole life is sort of taking advantage of freedom of expression and that, and you know, like I'm a gay man who can live openly gay, and so like the idea of like going to places where those kind of freedoms are not enjoyed by the people, and just kind of going there for a casual gawk and then heading back home, like there's something about that feels wrong to me. Like my sister, for example, lived in the Middle East for over a decade, and I never went to visit her because I kind of felt morally sort of compromised doing that. Like I don't want to just take advantage of a place strictly as a sort of tourist, and when their standard of living is more oppressed than mine. So
Yeah, that's fair. So you just didn't see her for like a decade?
well, I mean, she would come back here,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but yeah, I never wanted to go there. But
Yeah. No, I feel it. I mean, there's definitely part of that, but yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to it. I'm just curious, and I guess I don't think about it as much as you do.
you've been to a lot of unfree countries, right?
Yeah, Myanmar and
Vietnam.
Vietnam, but the people in Vietnam actually felt happy. I mean, there are poor, but
Yeah.
they didn't feel like oppressed or anything. I mean, it's communist, but
But I mean, but you presumably, like, you weren't talking with people that, you know, were in professions where the freedom is highly valued, like people that are journalists or people that are political activists and that sort of thing, right? Which is more kind of like the world that I'm familiar with.
yeah.
So, and because, like, again, like, I've been a political journalist, you know, I'm a commentator, I make videos where I talk about my beliefs on this, that, or the other thing. And, you know, just in many parts of the world, you can't do that. Like, you get censored, you get controlled, you know, you could even get thrown in prison for saying the wrong thing or expressing the
for
wrong
sure.
opinion, right?
Yeah.
And so, and, you know, to say nothing of the sort of the gay side of things, right? So just the degree that I value those freedoms very dearly. And, you know, I wouldn't want to, I don't know, do anything that could be seen as, you know, not appreciating the plight of those people who don't enjoy the same freedoms that I do.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, not only that, but like you would potentially be risking your own safety because you have like a big platform. So that's always a fear for sure. So yeah, well, I feel like it's a good place. And I know you got to get to dinner.
That's quite all right. But this was fun. It was nice reminiscing. I so rarely get a chance to, you know, just talk about this shared experience because most people obviously have not had this experience of being an English teacher in Japan. It's a very sort of niche life experience.
Yeah,
so,
the white monkeys.
Being the white monkeys, God, the gaijins, yeah. But it's cool. It's brought back a lot of memories. And,
Yeah, it was fun, man. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sitting down.
No problem.